Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome to a Books Beside My Bed video. If you're new here, I film one of these every week where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading, and if you're very familiar with the series, welcome back. This is my reading week from the 20th until the 26th of November. I read a total of 10 things that I'm going to be talking about in this video, and I also read 3 books for a vlog that is coming out later this week. I'm going to give you the stats for the books in this video and then the stats for the books that are in the vlog, because I think I forgot to do it when I edited the vlog. So for those 10 things, I read a total of 1,258 pages and my yearly reading total is 489 books. The 3 books that I read for the reading vlog included Mama's Boy by Avery Flynn, The Lady Gets Lucky by Joanna Shoup, and Duke Actually by Jenny Holiday, and altogether those 3 books equated to 1,124 pages. They were all books that I received as part of the Bonkers Romance Temple of Defiant Joy book club, so I've put them all into one particular reading vlog. So diving into the books that I read this week, I'm not going to do this quite chronologically just because I read a few books in some different series, so I've grouped the series together so it's easier to talk about. So I continued reading the Heroes and Villains series by Liza Penn and Natasha Lux. These are erotic Avengers retelling stories. They are superheroes who are very morally grey and honestly just delightful. They're ridiculous and fun. So I read Alter Ego, which is the second novel in the series and the 3rd story that I've read overall. This one is about Ari, who is All-American Man, which is basically the equivalent of Captain America, Piper, and Bryce. So this is essentially a Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Agent Carter Menage MMF story. However, within this particular story, you not only have the MMF element, you also have the relationship between the 2 men. There are some moments where there are some very brief FF scenes as well as MF scenes as well. So you run the whole gamut with all of these characters. Essentially, Ari is completely disillusioned with his role. He's realized he's sort of been under the control of his boss for a period of time. And so he takes himself off to Persephone, who is the leader of the villains, and offers himself up for penance. And in order to get there, he is met by Bryce, who is the Winter Soldier character, and Piper follows them. And before all of this, before they all became heroes, they were a throuple. And once the heroes started gaining some traction, it was not seen as a good political move to be in a 3-way relationship. So their relationship ended. They all end up in Persephone's club and it gets super steamy very, very quickly. You have disillusioned superheroes. You have 3 people trying to find their way back to a relationship. You can tell that they all care about each other, but they're just not sure how to go about it anymore. And it was a lot of fun. Then I read Secret Sanctum, which is book 3 in the Heroes and Villains series. This one is basically the Iron Man story. This is about Anthony, who is called the Steel Soldier, and Gwen, who is the daughter of a hero and a villain, but she keeps her parentage secret. It is an age gap romance. Anyway, Gwen is a reporter. She is trying to find out some information about something that she thinks is happening. She thinks there's a bit of a conspiracy going on, and so she starts trying to infiltrate the heroes, and her path crosses with Anthony, and the 2 have a moment, and then he realizes who she is and has a freak out moment. And when she explains exactly why she is trying to break into one of the heroes' facilities, they end up teaming up to try and uncover what is going on. I know that is really vague, but you kind of have to go with it with these stories because they are vaguely light on plot, but there is something that is moving them all forward. And as you read through the stories in order, you kind of get what's going on. I'm really enjoying it. I've finished the 1st volume of that series, so I'm going to continue with the 2nd volume, hopefully sometime soon. Then I read The Woman in the Wrong Place by Jessica Gaziella. I did receive this early as part of her early readers team. And this is the 3rd book in the Grassy Family series, which this is the 1st book in that particular series that I've read, but I know of the characters from her other series all set in Navesink Bank. It is about Josie and Mateo. Josie works for Mateo's company as an event coordinator, and one night she forgets something at work and she goes back in and she accidentally sees Mateo kill someone because he is one of the sons of a mafia family. She tries to run, he kidnaps her, she escapes, she blackmails him, and then things go from there. So honestly, this is just a bonkers ride and I really enjoyed it. I will probably go back and read the first 2 books in the Grassy Family series as well, but you don't have to have read them to read this one. I got it totally fine. Then I read Ilona Andrews' Kinsman series, which I had not read. So this consists of 2 novellas, a short story, and the most recent release is more of a full-length novel. It's about 200 pages. And so this series is science fiction, but it also reads very much like urban fantasy with romance elements. So it's kind of one of their weird blends of genres, and I really enjoyed it, but I'm probably going to do a terrible job of explaining it. So bear with me. So essentially humanity has gone out into the universe and settled down in various places. And I think the majority of these stories take place on a planet called Rada. And some of these humans have been genetically modified over time. They have weapons that are, they're almost like light weapons that are inside their arms but come out when they want to use them. Like I said, I'm going to do a terrible job of explaining it. But the first story follows Melly and Chileno, and they were engaged or betrothed as children to bring together two families. But there was a bit of an age gap. I think it's 7 or 8 years, maybe. Maybe it's less than that. As Chileno grew older and took over his family duties, he ended up breaking off that betrothal. But because of the way that it happened, Melly's family were never sure whether or not he was going to turn around and reclaim her, so she was not able to get married to anyone else. And eventually, in order to try and live some semblance of her own life, because she couldn't do anything without knowing whether or not this was going to come back and bite her later on, she excised herself from her family. So she's not officially a family member anymore, and she became their family assassin. And in this story, her family has Chileno in their sights. She sets about trying to trap him, and it doesn't quite go according to anyone's plans. He actually begins to fall back in love with her before he realizes who she is, because he hasn't seen her in years. It was just really interesting and fascinating. I probably need to go back and reread this one, having read the other books in the series. I think I'll probably piece a few things together a little bit better, but I did enjoy it. It's a very fascinating world. Then I read Silver Shark, which is the second book, and I really loved this one. So again, humans out in space, but we start off meeting Claire, and this one is told in no single point of view. So it's all told from Claire's point of view. And she is a soldier engaged in a war that has been going on for 68 years. So she was born into this war. And suddenly the tides turn and her side loses, and it's very sudden, and all of the soldiers on her side are being executed, so she has to escape, and she pretends to be a refugee, and she ends up on Rada. And because she is currently there under refugee status and she is hiding her status as a soldier, she is given a very low entry job. She's there to work, to basically do data entry or to work as a secretary for this company that is headed by a very powerful family. And she meets Venturo, who is a soldier just like she is, but he's basically like a corporate version of her. And so she spends this whole time hiding just how capable and competent she is. But then some of her fellow refugees, people that she has known for many years, end up in trouble. And so she bands together with a group of them to try and basically infiltrate this online cyber network to hide the information and hopefully free their friend. And as they're breaking in on this sort of cyber plane, Venturo finds her and they fight on this plane. And they look like different representations. So what she sees and what he sees are very different because the cyber landscape is skewed by their perspective. It was just a really fascinating concept. Like, as I said, terrible job of describing it, but the book itself is really interesting and a fairly short read as well. I like those kinds of books. There is a short story called A Mere Formality, which I was reading through some of the notes afterwards, and this was written as a joke because Ilona Andrews were told that they couldn't write a story based around a particular phrase, and so they did it. And that totally makes sense because this is a short story. It's bonkers, but really fun. So this is about Deirdre and Lord Nagrid. So Deirdre works as an attaché for a diplomat, and he finds himself caught in a political situation when one of the leaders that he is meeting with dies at dinner. He's the leader of the Ray. There are fierce people who are known for just fighting and taking whatever they want. And so his death is rather inconvenient, and his son steps up to take on the role of leader, and he demands as restitution a bride, and he wants Deirdre. And so she begins a fierce negotiation because she's decided that if she is going to live with them for the rest of her life, then she wants to know all of the details of what this life is going to entail. And it is absolutely hilarious because he wants sexual rights with his wife, but she decides to go, okay, so we're going to spend an entire day listing all of the sexual acts that we could possibly go through and which ones you want and which ones you don't want. And it was just so funny. I was laughing so hard while reading it. It was completely insane, but really fun. And then I think my favorite is the most recent release, which is Fated Blades, which is currently only out in ebook form and I think comes out in paperback next year. and I'm definitely going to be buying the paperback of this one. So this is about Matthias and Ramona, and they are both Sakara or genetically modified humans who have combat abilities. And they come from two warring families who initially settled in the same place. The research that went into genetically modifying these humans initially has sort of been lost to history, but they've all got little aspects of that research and they're trying to recreate it because both Matthias and Ramona were born, so they're second, third, fourth generations of these original people, and they want to recapture that knowledge of what was done to their family members, mostly to keep it out of the hands of people who would do something nefarious with it, I suppose. Their research is stolen, so they're two separate families, all of their research is stolen, and Ramona ends up coming to Matthias and they strike up a very, very uneasy alliance to work together. They don't want anyone else to know that the research has been stolen. They don't want anyone to know that they're working together. And then they go after the thieves, who turn out to be their respective spouses who are in a relationship together. So they're both furious and they handle it in different ways. And they both have these perceptions of each other that slowly begin to shift as they spend time working together. And it turns out that they work really well together. And their fighting technique is very complementary of each other. And then of course this becomes a romance and it was just glorious. And the cover for this is stunning. I absolutely love this cover. Then I read Fall Into You by Georgina Kirsten. This is a black sapphic romance. It is a novella length, I'm pretty sure. And it is set in a small town, and we have Imari, who has just moved into this small town and is sort of settling in and getting used to it. And she runs into a childhood friend, Cassidy, and it's Thanksgiving. I think they're at a market when they reconnect for the first time, and then it is their relationship as they go from childhood friends to lovers. This one was okay. I wasn't fully invested in it, I suppose, but there was nothing inherently wrong with the story. I just don't know if it was maybe the right time for me to read it, but I would be interested in checking out other things by this author in the future. Then Katie Robert released her Patreon short story for this month. It's called A Very Krampus Christmas. It is a very short, very steamy, erotic monster romance featuring Krampus. And you have Imogen, who has murdered someone for doing very bad things. Now she's hiding out in a cabin in the middle of nowhere around Christmas time, and all she can think about is the blood on her hands, which was physical but is now metaphorical, and Krampus comes to visit her and essentially punishes her. Very short, very steamy, very Katie Robert. And then the last book that I read this week is probably my favorite book after Fated Blades, or is sort of on par with it, was The Demon Next Door by Chace Verity. So you guys know how much I loved Deal with a Demon by Chace Verity when I read it last year, and I reread it this year. This is a second book like that, and it was so fun and just sweet and gorgeous. It is about a single mum called Molly who has a son, Jackson, in primary school. I think he's about 7. While she's juggling everything, she starts to get phone calls from the school that things are not quite right with Jackson, and then she finds out that Jackson has made a new friend with a new boy at school called Ty, who happens to live next door. So Molly and Jackson now have new neighbours, but Molly is quite concerned because she sees Ty outside in the snow in shorts and a t-shirt, and he's totally fine, but he's not wearing appropriate clothing. And so she goes next door to meet his single dad called Newitt. Something is not quite right, and she realizes that he's a demon. And at first she thinks it's a costume, but he reveals that she's one of the rare humans who can actually see his true form. And so he is here to give Ty a life on the human realm. Molly and Newitt have this gorgeous relationship that develops over time. He's very formal and he gets involved in her life, but he gets involved in her life to make things easier. So when Jackson gets into trouble at school, he defends Jackson and Molly to the principal. And you know, when her car gets snowed in the driveway, he clears the snow with magic, and it's just so sweet. And the steamy scenes in here, which are in the sort of towards the end of the book, are super hot, but mostly it's just this glorious little story about two people connecting who are completely different, but really come to rely on each other. And I had a great time reading it. All right, so those are the books that I read this week. In the comments below, let me know if you have read any of these books or if you're planning on picking them up, or alternatively, feel free to share something you have really been enjoying reading this week. If you want to let me know you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave a sword emoji down below. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.